Hugh Freeze spoke to the media on Monday, and he did not name a starting quarterback.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Hugh Freeze just got done seconds ago speaking to the media. We'll discuss other aspects of what he said, but the thing that I think most people are going to care most about, injury update, which was interesting, but quarterback, obviously after his opening statements, which we'll get to in a second, Jason Caldwell, sounds like, was the first to get a question, and the first question was the obvious question that needed to be asked was, all right, after the game, you were asked about who's going to be the starter moving forward. You said you needed to look at the film. So after looking at the film, where are we? And the first thing he said was, well, the best thing that brings out the best of in people is competition. So it's an open competition. He's going to look and see what Jackson Arnold and Ashton Daniels do throughout the week, and we'll see exactly how that goes. Kind of a similar answer to what we heard last week. Of course, Jackson Arnold got the start. I'm truly fascinated to see how this goes, because I think it could go both ways. I think it could absolutely go the way most Auburn fans feel about it. One of the first comments in the live chat before we went live was from somebody saying that it was Daniel saying, "Oh, I knew he wasn't going to start Ashton." Like, well, hold on. Like he hasn't started Jackson yet. The other aspect of it, like, is it gamesmanship? Is it a true competition? I think all of them make sense for different reasons. My thing is, and I don't know how great of a situation Jackson has been put in, and them like bringing Jackson next to him at the pressers. Like, I've been pretty consistent that I don't love that after losses. If Jackson's just going to kind of sit there, like, I don't think Hugh Freeze helped Jackson Arnold in that situation. This is another instance where if it's Saturday night, especially if they keep it close to the vest till game time, which at this point, I don't know why you wouldn't do that. And if you name Jackson Arnold the starter, like, I fear for how Auburn fans will react. And we've already kind of had to dance around Jackson Arnold's confidence since he's gotten here. I don't think that's a great recipe for success. I'm just going to be honest with you, because I don't think Auburn fans that'll be rowdy on a Saturday night in Jordan-Hare knowing this is a game that they should win, I don't know how positively they'll react to that situation. And look, I think Auburn will beat Kentucky regardless of who you start. I think if Jackson Arnold starts, they beat Kentucky. I think if Ashton Daniels starts, they beat Kentucky. Heck, I think if they start Deuce Knight, they beat Kentucky. I don't think Kentucky's very good. But my thing is, okay, like, what if Jackson's not crisp? The most important game after this is obviously Vanderbilt. If you're Hugh Freeze, you've got to think, I can probably save my job if I beat Kentucky and beat Vanderbilt. And I just trust Ashton Daniels right now to win that game more than Jackson Arnold. And he was asked a question about Ashton's red shirt. And his quick response was, I'm just worried about beating Kentucky, which isn't a bad answer. That's not a bad answer at all. And then he talked about, like, the reason that the whole red shirt thing came up was because he got here so late and he's just developed so much quicker than he expected and all that. But if the red shirt thing is something they're throwing out, then I think that makes not starting him even more of a concern. So I am somewhat surprised with this answer. I think it would have given such a jolt and another spark to the fan base throughout the team, but it sounds like they're both going to get reps, which I don't love, because if it's truly a battle and a competition and you're splitting reps 50-50 or 60-40 one way or the other, my question then would be, all right, well, if you are starting a new quarterback for the first time, why would you take reps away from him? Or if you have a quarterback that is battling and is clearly not like it, once again, like I want him to have all the reps. So I don't love that they're going to split reps up on all of this. I'm going to hope that this is just gamesmanship by Hugh Freeze. Then over the course of the week, we will hear chatter where it's like, yes, Ashton appears to be the guy as far as who's going through reps. That's what I'm hoping. But we'll see. And for all the folks that are saying, oh my goodness, I know Hugh Freeze wouldn't pull Jackson on a permanent basis, you'll be able to say that Saturday night if that's the case. I think Jackson Arnold's time is done. It's just my guess. That's just my guess. Mike G asked the question right after the quarterback situation question was asked about, hey, you mentioned both. So just to be clear, like, is Deuce Knight not a part of this? And he didn't really say yes or no. He just like didn't answer the question. He was just like, yeah, I think Deuce is the future of this program, which, yeah, it's down to Jackson or Ashton. I don't think Deuce starting on Saturday is a thing. Does Deuce come into play against Mercer when you talk about potentially saving Ashton's red shirt? I think that makes sense. I think that makes a ton of sense. Unless they want to give Jackson, one last ride, and we'll see what happens with that. Some major injury news that I think could impact the game Saturday in a very promising way. That's next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time's the best place to buy tickets for college football games. And look, it's going to be a hot ticket Saturday night. It's going to be fun. It's a game that you feel good about Auburn winning. And I'm trying to pull up just real quickly Auburn versus Kentucky tickets to see exactly how much you can get in there for. And it's not going to be very expensive because it's Game Time and they've got you covered. You can use promo code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase today to save $20 off at Game Time. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. Today's show also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Auburn now a 10.5-point favorite, according to our friends at FanDuel. I think it opened at 9.5, which I thought was high. 10.5, I think it's pretty high as well. But I think that's great. Auburn getting some love in this matchup against Kentucky after beating Arkansas last week. Right now, new customers with FanDuel can get $300 in bonus bets for their first $5 bet if it wins. So head over to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We got some nice injury updates. Darrell Robinson is back. We heard that he was out there running last week. Sounds like he's expected to go and will be a part of the game plan this Saturday, which is awesome. More on what that impact will be in just a moment. Cam Coleman, Hugh Freeze's words, not mine, said he looked bad yesterday, much better today. So hopefully they don't rush him back. But I'm interested to see exactly how involved he can be on Saturday. And then no update on Horatio Fields, but he said I don't think he's close. Because he's not out there, he would have been made available or aware. Hugh Freeze would have been if he was out there. And then they talked a little bit about a potential medical red shirt. So that'd be cool. That'd be great to have Horatio back next year. So that's your injury update. I mean, obviously the Cam Coleman stuff is self-explanatory. You want him out there, and maybe they'll kind of craft some stuff up if he's not. I would think that'd be a larger role for Perry Thompson. And then maybe you find more creative ways to get Malcolm Simmons and Eric Singleton the football. But Darrell Robinson, like later in the press conference, I think it was Justin Ferguson who asked Hugh Freeze, like, hey, career highs in carries and yards for Jeremiah Cobb. And Freeze talked about how great he's been and, how their yards per rush have been incredible. And we all know that Auburn's been great at running the football. But the load that he had to carry last week was pretty high. And I don't think of Cobb as this guy who you want to give 20 touches a game. So we'll see if that dwindles down a bit. I'd love for him to be out 14 or 15. Then you give Darrell 3 or 4 and give Omar Mabson maybe about 3 or 4. I'm 100% happy with that. But Darrell Robinson being back is awesome. Like, I think that's really big, especially on passing downs. I love Jeremiah Cobb. I do not love him in pass protection. So maybe that's somewhere where Darrell Robinson can kind of step in and help out whoever's playing quarterback at Auburn. Obviously gave a ton of love to the special teams and defense in his opening statements, which, of course, in some of the special team stats, he said, only punting once. And obviously Alex McPherson was great. And, tackling on kickoff coverage inside the 20 by, I think it was Robinson that did that. I mean, a lot of cool moments for special teams, because that has been a position group or part of the team that has been awful, has been absolutely awful. So good for them to get a nice, solid special teams win over Arkansas. And obviously the defense is what the defense is. He gave a ton of love to Xavier Atkins, who won co-defensive player of the week in the SEC, which is great. He gave love to Kale Ellis, talked about how he had to block, a pretty large nose guard on the other side of the ball that Arkansas had. And talked about, like, from a technique standpoint, there's a few things that just experience is going to have to, a lot of teaching tape, I think, for Kale Ellis, but gave him credit where credit was due. And then the last question of the presser was one of the better questions. It was from our buddy Mike G. Asked, like, hey, Brian Kelly got let go. He's now the third coach in the SEC to be let go. Are you having conversations with John Cohen right now? And Freeze said no. No, he didn't really see the benefit of having those conversations, which I actually think I don't have an issue with that answer at all. I don't know what that would help. He's aware of the situation. But I do think, he kind of went on to talk about, like, the weight that a head coach carries. And I do think this is important to think about just from a humanity standpoint. I don't know if it should change. It shouldn't change your opinion on, if somebody should be let go or not. But talking about, like, he hates it for the building, when Brian Kelly is let go, it's like there's so many families that are impacted by that because, they came to work for that head coach. And so I do think that is something that was worth noting for sure. But all in all, that was a presser. That was a presser. The big thing is him not naming a quarterback. And I think you can kind of talk about and speculate. Is it gamesmanship? Is it truly a competition? I just can't see him going back to Jackson Arnold, guys. I can't see him doing it. And if he does, that would be very, very bad. And then obviously the injury stuff was a big deal. So if anybody has any questions or comments, I'll stay here for a few minutes and hit those up. If somebody wants to ask those, it's like a lot of it's y'all arguing and discussing stuff with each other, which is fine. I saw somebody say, like, you're 4-4, name a starter. I don't disagree with that. But also, if you're in a spot where, like, you think you can get an edge, that's fine. He was asked the question, I think Dan Peck asked it, like, does how you call the offense change, or does the offensive game plan change if Ashton is in versus Jackson? And he said no. And so then my question is, like, if that's true, does the gamesmanship of it actually matter? And I said this in the post game, where, like, I don't think it changes how you prepare for Jackson versus Ashton. Like, I do think they're pretty similar. Is one more comfortable than the others? But as far as, like, how you defend them schematically, I can't imagine it would be that much different. So I do question how much of it actually matters for the gamesmanship. Brad asks, can we use a slot receiver for our quarterback? Who would this be, Zach? In short, no. And if you're talking about, like, a package or something, like, maybe you could direct snap to Singleton or Malcolm or something. But as far as, like, a full-time quarterback, I think, I would rather, I think you go to Deuce before you do that. Zach, Z-A-C-K. We need an edge against Kentucky. Auburn needs an edge against anybody. What are we watching the same thing? Are we watching the same thing? Offensively? Yeah, we need help, guys. Like what? Yes, we shouldn't. We shouldn't need an edge against Kentucky, but to act like we don't, like I think that's crazy. I think that's crazy. People talking about boycotting games. Wild. All right, we will wrap it up here. But yeah, big takeaways. He did not name a starter. I'm fascinated to see if that continues throughout the week. And then big injury news. Darrell Robinson set to be a part of the game plan this Saturday, as well as Cam Coleman questionable, I guess, just to kind of read between the lines. And then Horatio Fields doesn't really sound like there's a lot of updates on that. Jay Wayne saying, Zach, are we going to struggle in the coaching carousel? We could. The timing of it is not ideal. I don't really want to do that until, Hugh Freeze if he is let go. I don't want to, but you got to think if they make the move or think they're going to make the move, you got to hope that those conversations are happening. And that's just something we'll never fully know before. Mr. Mischief, Zach, looking very handsome today. Thank you. We'll end on that note. We'll end on a positive note. Thank you, Mr. Mischief. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.